beliefs very often become self-fulfilling prophecies. But how does it work? How does it work? Let me share with you this model that I created based on a lot of research in the field that essentially tries to explain how our beliefs, our expectations impact our performance, whether it's through the placebo drug, whether it's our performance in school, in sports, in relationships, in every area in our lives. In other words, what comes in the box here, or in the oval here? What mediates between beliefs, expectations, and actual performance in the real world? I want to talk about two mechanisms. The first one is very straightforward, relatively simple. It's motivation. So, if I believe that I can do well, and think about your own past experiences, when you believe that you could do well in something, you're much more likely to be motivated than if you think that you're hopeless and have no chance. You're much more likely to resign and not do anything. You're much more likely to be motivated before the event, whatever the event may be, in training and practice, as well as during the event, while it's taking place. Think about what Marva Collins did. She motivated her students. She made them believe that they could achieve, that they could make something out of their lives, that it was their responsibility, that it was up to them. And that made all the difference for them, because they were motivated, they worked hard. So motivation makes a difference. There is another thing, though, in addition to motivation, and that is the notion of consistency or congruence. What does that mean? You see, we all have a mental schema of the world, a mental schema of the way the world should be, ought to be, or is. For example, I have a mental schema that suggests that things fall when left in midair. So I have a schema that says that if I drop this, it will actually fall. I have a schema about my ability in mathematics, that I'm either a good mathematician, that I have potential in this area, or not. I also have a schema about other people. I like this person. That person is a nice person. Versus, this person is just not nice, cruel. So we have schemas about other people, about ourselves, about natural phenomena. This is inside the schema. And then there is the outside world. In the outside world, actual things take place. So for example, when this is left in midair, it falls. This has nothing to do with my schema. It's outside, regardless. It happens regardless of my schema. Now, I have certain potential in mathematics, regardless of my schema. A certain person behaves generously and benevolently toward other people, or in a hateful manner toward other people, regardless of my schema. So there is what's inside and what is outside. And here is the key point. You see, the mind does not like when there is a discrepancy between what is inside and what is outside. The mind likes when there is consistency, congruence between the two. And if there is no congruence, if there is no consistency, then we experience a sense of dissonance. Then we experience dis-ease. Doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right, and we do very often everything that we can to get the two on par again, either by changing the external reality or by changing our mind to match the external reality. We don't like when there is inconsistency. There are a few ways in which we can create this consistency again. Let me share with you just some of them, and I'm going to share 4. They're interconnected, there is relationship between, there is overlaps, but just so it helps you think about it. That helps you understand the dialogue that takes place between what is inside, or what is inside, and what is outside. So the first thing we can do when there is a discrepancy, when there is inconsistency between the two, is update schema. This is the first thing we can do. So, I didn't know things fell when left in midair. Now I know. I updated my schema. Or I thought that person was actually hateful, but I just saw them behave so generously and benevolently. Now I update my schema. It's a nice person. The second thing that we do, which happens much more often than the first one, is ignore or discard external information. We ignore or discard external information that doesn't match our schema. We don't like this inconsistency. We just throw the inconsistency out, so to speak, by ignoring it, discarding it. The third thing we do, we actively seek confirmation. We actively seek confirmatory data. I mean, think about number 2 and 3. Think about it in the realm, we're in the midst of election year. Think about the person you're not going to vote for, or the person you didn't vote for. What we do, very often, let's say I see President Bush doing something good, actually fighting for a cause that I believe in. But I didn't vote Bush, for instance. Very often what I would do is ignore and discard that information, and then look for confirming evidence that will suggest or that will confirm to me why I don't like Bush in the first place. The same regarding, say the future elections, Hillary or Obama. If I dislike them, I will look for confirming evidence why I dislike them. And even if they do things that I like and value and believe in, I very often will ignore these things and discard them. And what you're doing here, you're creating a reality, because you're asking a question such as, where has Bush done terrible things? Or where has Hillary or Obama did terrible things? And when we ask these questions, we completely ignore, discard, not see the positives. Remember, when I asked you about the geometric shapes, you didn't see the children on the bus, even though they were right there in front of your very eyes. So we know that questions create reality. And in order to maintain this consistency, we do very often one of these two things. Either ignore and discard, or seek confirming evidence, positive or negative, to back up our schema. Hillary Obama is good, or Bush is good, or whatever it is that we're thinking about. The fourth thing is much more directly creating a new reality. What kind of reality existed before the 6th of May 1954? It was a reality in which 4 minutes was the limit of human ability. And what did Edison do? What did Bannister do? He said it's possible, and then he changed the external reality. Not just for himself, but also for other runners in the world. And suddenly a new reality was created. Initially the schema was 4 minutes is not possible, or rather 4 minutes is not possible, and everyone adhered to this schema. Roger Bannister came along and said it is possible, and changed that reality, not just for himself, but for other runners who were there. The thing, though, is that after we perform with high motivation or low motivation, mind looking for consistency, all that is left for us to do is interpret our performance. Was it successful or not successful, good or bad? And there are two forms of interpretation. One is the objective interpretation. Did I just get an A on the exam, or did I get a C? Did I just come third, or did I come last in the race? Did I just beat Princeton in hockey on Friday, or did I lose to Princeton? Go Harvard. So what happened? This is the reality. It's objective. It's objective. But then there is also the subjective interpretation based on my beliefs. Let me share an example with you. This is a story told about Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, back in the 1870s, was working along with the rest of the scientific community on the light bulb, on generating light from electricity. The entire scientific community, or much of it, was working on that issue with no success. Thomas Edison being no exception. A journalist from one of the local papers came to Thomas Edison to interview him. He was already famous by then. He had invented many things. And they were talking about various things. And then they got to talk about the light bulb. And the journalist said to Edison, "Mr. Edison, you've been working on the light bulb for many years. The rest of the scientific community has been working on it to no avail." Now, at that point, Thomas Edison had conducted 5,000 experiments. And the journalist knew that, so he told Edison, "Mr. Edison, you have conducted 5,000 experiments and you failed 5,000 times. Give it up." Now, Thomas Edison, some of you may know, was also hard of hearing. In fact, one of his patents was a hearing aid. So he said to the journalist, "Excuse me, what did you say?" The journalist said, "Well, I said you failed 5,000 times. Give it up." So Edison responded, "I didn't fail 5,000 times. I succeeded 5,000 times. I succeeded in showing what doesn't work." Same objective reality. Performance, 5,000 failed experiments, but very different interpretation. The journalist and many other people in the scientific community conclude it's not possible. The interpretation, subjective interpretation of Edison, it's just another stepping stone towards success, because it is possible. In fact, Edison declared, before he had the light bulb, that on the 31st of December 1879, he would display the light bulb.